All right, let's get this polished up, make it sound less like a robot wrote it and more like, well, me. With a bit of human flair. 05s. So is Dubai's shiny, impressive skyline really just built on, sand? 510s. Hey folks, I'm your host. I've spent ages digging through piles of financial data, and believe me, what the headlines aren't telling you about this $500 billion housing bubble simmering under the desert sun. It's wild. 1015s. Stick with me for the next 16 minutes, and we're gonna pull back the curtain on the hidden weaknesses, the crazy risks, and what might actually happen when this Dubai real estate market, currently teetering on the edge, finally tips over. 1530s. Just a heads up, for this piece, some names and details have been tweaked to keep folks' privacy intact. But the core events and the money stuff, that's all real based on a ton of research and sources I've checked out. 3045s. Dubai's property market has really bounced back, huh? After everything with the pandemic, they saw record-breaking sales numbers in 2021 and 2022. Apparently, a bunch of rich people and new residents moving in really kicked things into high gear. 4560s. This isn't just some little recovery, though. It's a full-on boom. All these high-net-worth individuals pouring in, especially from Europe and Asia, have sent prices for fancy homes through the roof in 2023. 6075s. On the outside, it looks like a masterclass in bouncing back economically. Dubai, a city that practically started with ambition and oil money, has really remade itself into a global center for business, tourism, and most importantly for this chat, investing. 7590s. Its crazy rise? That was all thanks to some serious vision and a never-ending push to attract money from overseas. But underneath all that impressive growth, a really tangled web of problems has started to grow. 9105s. This isn't your average housing bubble, the kind where there's just way too much stuff and prices are dropping. Nah, this one's sneakier, built on connected risks, and a massive dependence on money just keeps flowing in, no questions asked. 105 120s. Even the International Monetary Fund is watching this. While they admit the market has been tough, they've pointed out it's super vulnerable to outside problems, and there's a real risk of too much supply, especially for homes. Source: IMF United Arab Emirates 2023 Article IV Consultation. 12135s. Because it leans so hard on cash from other countries, Dubai's market is basically tied at the hip to how stable the global economy is. Any big slowdown anywhere else, that could send major tremors right into its property sector. 135 150s. Experts are starting to get worried about things overheating, even with all these record sales happening. It's not really a question of if the market is shaky, but just how badly those weak spots are hidden. 151 165s. The sheer size of Dubai's real estate scene is mind-blowing. People estimate its total worth, homes, businesses, hotels, the works, is somewhere around $500 billion. $165 180s. This is way bigger than just buildings. It's about people's jobs, huge international investments, and the financial health of a city that's basically bet its entire future on being an unshakable global meeting point. 180 195s. That strong demand in the fancy part of the market. While it's good for that specific area, it can also hide what's really going on elsewhere. Are these price hikes actually going to last, or are they just covering up bigger problems? Source: Bloomberg. 195 210s. Oxford Economics is actually forecasting things to cool down a bit in Dubai's property market. They're not calling for a crash right now, but their prediction does suggest a move away from the crazy growth we've seen lately. Source: Oxford Economics. 210 225s. This hidden bubble thing is all about a really tricky balance. Developers keep building like there's no tomorrow, totally sure demand will keep up, while the actual economic ground beneath them is being swayed by global trends. 225 240s. The real danger comes from how everything is connected. If foreign investment slows down or global economic moods shift, or even if there's some international drama, it could set off a chain reaction. messing with property values and the whole economy. 240-255s. So what's really on the line here? For folks investing from abroad, it's billions of dollars sitting in those super tall Dubai buildings. For the city itself, it's the whole story of success and stability it's worked so hard to create. 255-270s. This isn't just a simple market adjustment story. It's a deep dive into a complicated money system where what looks like prosperity might actually be hiding a pretty shaky reality. 272-85s. The big question we all need to ask is, how much longer can Dubai's glitzy exterior hold up against all the pressure building underneath it all? Dubai. Man, this city just screams ambition, right? Like buildings that scrape the sky and an economy that just keeps chugging along. For ages, its property market has been a huge draw for money from all over the world, a real shining example of growth. But peel back that shiny layer, and there's a whole different story playing out. It's a tale of crazy speculation, money moving around in ways nobody can quite track, and a housing market that's looking like it could take a serious nosedive. This isn't just some regular property upswing. It's more like a fancy building put up on some pretty wobbly ground. Okay, picture this. A sweeping drone shot flying over Dubai's famous skyline, then it zooms in on those super fancy apartment buildings. The sheer size of Dubai's real estate goals is pretty mind-blowing. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars being sunk into construction, basically turning sand into some kind of global hotspot. But seriously, how is all this massive building actually getting paid for? A big chunk of it is being powered by methods that are, let's be honest, totally messing with the market. It's just so easy for money to pour into Dubai, often without much checking, making it a go-to spot for people just wanting to speculate. And it doesn't help that the rules, even though they're getting better, haven't always been as tough as in a lot of places over in the West. Shady money and speculative cash. When you don't have super strong rules, you end up with an environment that's just perfect for money laundering and stashing dirty money. Rich folks who want to make their money look legit or just keep it safe think Dubai is a pretty good place to do that, even if it's a bit risky. All this hot money coming in doesn't really mean there's a real need for more houses. Instead, it just drives up prices, creating this bubble that has nothing to do with how the economy is actually doing. Experts have been worried about this market getting too hot, even while sales are hitting all-time highs. Source: Reuters. Imagine some graphics here, showing cash flowing into Dubai from different countries, but with question marks floating around, signaling that nobody's totally sure where it's all coming from. Relying on money from other countries is kind of like a two-sided coin. Dubai's property market has gotten super tied up with how the economies are doing in certain groups of investors. We're seeing a ton of investment coming from places like Russia, India, and China. And this money flow isn't set in stone. It shifts around depending on what's happening politically and economically back in their home countries. If something goes wrong in Moscow, or China's economy slows down, or India hits some financial bumps that can send waves or even tsunamis right into Dubai's real estate scene. Picture a map of the world, with lines connecting Dubai to Russia, India, and China, just showing all that cash moving back and forth. Think about what happens when international sanctions kick in or a currency suddenly loses value. When money becomes risky or hard to get hold of elsewhere, Dubai suddenly looks like a better, or maybe even a necessary, place for that cash. This dependence on just a few big foreign investor groups makes the market super vulnerable to outside problems. Source: IMF. Sure, all those wealthy people showing up recently, especially from Europe and Asia, have definitely given the fancy parts of the market a boost. Source: Bloomberg. But having so much wealth concentrated from just a few areas creates its own set of dangers. Now imagine stock market numbers from Russia, India, and China, all showing a lot of ups and downs. Plus, the ways money is being handled in Dubai's market makes these risks even bigger. Selling properties before they're even built, off-plan sales, is a huge part of how developers get funding. While that's pretty normal everywhere in Dubai, it often makes it super easy for people to just speculate. Buyers can snag places with very little cash up front, planning to sell them for more money before they're even finished. This basically creates a whole second market that's really sensitive to any price changes. Visualize an animation where a property is sold, like multiple times off-plan before it's even built. Crazy, right? And then you've got the investment funds that use a lot of borrowed money. These guys often take out huge loans to invest in real estate, trying to make as much profit as possible. When the market's going up, that can be incredibly profitable. But when prices stop moving or start dropping, all that borrowed money can lead to super fast and disastrous losses, forcing them to sell at a loss and making a downturn even worse. Real estate naturally goes in cycles, and when you mix that with these aggressive money strategies, you get a really unpredictable situation. Oxford Economics is actually predicting things will cool down a bit in Dubai's property market, which is a sign that this rapid growth might not last forever. Source: Oxford Economics. The music here should subtly change, becoming a little more serious, more analytical. So what we're seeing here is a market that's being pushed along not just by people who actually need places to live, but by money looking to make quick profits, by money that's hard to trace, and by a reliance on just a small group of international investors. This complex web of finances, while making for impressive growth right now, has some serious weak spots built right in. The real question isn't if these weak spots are going to get hit, but when. All right, let's get this section sounding a little more like, well, real talk. You look at Dubai's skyline, all those shiny towers that used to scream, "We've made it." Yeah, well, now they're just casting these seriously long shadows. And honestly, under all that glitz and glamour, you can start seeing the real cracks forming. The numbers we're seeing lately, the actual transaction data, it tells a way different story than what you read in the headlines. We're noticing a pretty worrying jump in empty apartments and houses all over the place. And those occupancy rates, which are the real way to tell if people actually want to live here, they're just quietly taking a nosedive. Source: Reuters. But get this, the prices? They're still somehow jacked up artificially, which just doesn't make sense when you look at the actual economy. Loads of new buildings that were supposed to go up. They're just sitting there, unfinished. It's like a quiet confession that there are too many places and not enough buyers. This doesn't sound like a city booming, does it? It sounds more like everything's just holding its breath, waiting. The folks who really know what they're doing with money, they're already heading for the exits. You know, the smart investors, the ones who get how markets move up and down. They're pulling back, reducing their risks. They're moving